Wow. More bad news from Canelo. Payday. You want payday? I know that. Alvarez. Canelo Alvarez says that Demetrius Andrade, he don't get no shot. He's a horrible fighter. So horrible. Canelo said he never wants to fight with him. I'm gonna talk about that in this video. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Listen, I don't know how you found the video. Somehow, some way, you made it. Help others make it and find the content with a free gesture. Throw a like on the video. Goes a long way. It's free, and others will help find the content. Now, we got to listen to this. Brian Custer, and I'll put the link in the description. Brian Custer did an interview with Canelo I was born ready, right? And he did a segment where the fans got to ask some questions. We'll see what's popping.
William on Twitter asks, hey Canelo, why have you continually refused to fight Demetrius Andrade? Never at 154 or at 160, and he holds a belt. You call him boring, but you smash Billy Joe Saunders, and his style is similar.
Now, just off listening to this, my immediate reaction is, this is a pretty well-versed fan. I could tell by how questions are formed if the fan, is super casual. Like, for example, I cover boxing. So before the pandemic, I was going to all the fights, and sometimes I would take Lyft, Uber, and I would tell them, they were like, oh, what are you in town for? And I'll tell them, hey, I'm going to boxing, or I cover boxing, blah, blah, blah. And I could tell immediately, because boxing is like a secret society. Boxing is there's a lot of casual fans, more than real diehard fans. And you could tell who's like more of a diehard fan based on how they talk. So when I be in the lift and tell them what I do, they were like, oh, I miss the days of Mike Tyson. Like, they're trying to make conversation, but a lot of people don't know enough about boxing. Like Roger Mayweather said, most don't know ish about boxing. They showing that. And boxing is such a niche sport that they don't know enough to carry on any other conversation. So they go for the lowest hanging fruit, like, oh, I miss the Mike Tyson days. The heavyweight division's not the same. Or Mayweather and Conor McGregor, Mayweather Pacquiao. And those are like the common topics that they go to. But this question that Brian Custer got, you could tell the person knows a little bit because, or at least a generous amount, because they're saying specifics. Hey, you said that you wouldn't fight Demetrius Andrade because they're a boring fighter, right? So that's a little bit more specific. You have to be paying attention to who said what. So shout out to the fan who left the comment.
Have you continually refused to fight Demetrius Andrade? Never at 154 or at 160, and he holds a belt. You call him boring, but you smash Billy Joe Saunders, and his style is similar.
You smash Billy Joe Saunders, but he has a similar style. So why not the black fighter, Demetrius Boo Boo Andrade? And this is Canelo's response.
No, he's a horrible fighter. I never want to fight with him.
No, he's a horrible fighter. I don't ever want to fight with him. So Demetrius Andrade obviously seen this, and he posted this, and it said, what? Wait a minute, huh? And he's crying, and he said, what? Wow. So let me take it back a little bit for the fans.
Style is similar.
No, he's a horrible fighter. I never want to fight with him. He fought with anybody, so.
He said he ain't fought with anybody, so. And then Demetrius Andrade said he looked so scared, fear, and he put a gif of Magic Johnson though, and Big Boy from Outkast. He says Andrade ain't fought with nobody, and then Andrade said this is.
He fought with anybody, so.
So there you have it. That's the topic of this video. Now, speaking of horrible, because those were the choice words that Canelo, payday, you want payday. I know that those are the choice words that he said. So I'll stick with the phrasing of horrible. What's horrible, he said Demetrius Andrade is a horrible fighter. What's actually horrible to me is that Canelo fixed his lips to say that he, on record, never wants to fight. So this is a fan question. Funny thing is this, Brian Custer, shout out to him. He had Canelo on earlier this year. I don't know what month or whatever, but earlier he did an interview with Canelo, and he himself, it wasn't a fan question. He asked about Andrade, trying to get all the points out and try to get all the questions that he had out. And Canelo pretty much said more of the same. So now a fan asked a question, and he just picked random fan questions to go over with Canelo, and then the fans asking the question. So what does that tell you? Let's be real. This is a bad look for Canelo Alvarez. I understand he's in the undisputed big fight with Caleb Plant. I'm looking forward to see that. I will do my best to cover, this fight like I have been when they were slapping each other, the press conference, etc. But the boxing is not going to play me for a fool. I'm way too smart for that. So the fact that Brian Custer in a previous interview is asking you about this, and then now a fan is asking you about this, and Canelo's just dismissive of fighting Demetrius Andrade. The fan, again, knowing their stuff, said you refused to fight him at 54. He's a belted champion even at 160. You didn't fight him there either. What gives? And Canelo, I just told you who I thought I was. Oh, God. So this goes back to what I've told you in the past. I personally, believe that Canelo, he's a great fighter, but I also believe Canelo is a diva. Canelo is selectively handpicking when and who he wants to fight. This is not even an opinion at this point. This is provable fact. Like if we did a science fair project and the thesis was what I just said, it would be provable. For example, let me run down a couple examples. Smash the like button because I'm the best to ever do this. Okay. So, for example, Triple G and Max. Yeah, everybody, big drama, right? Triple G was calling out Canelo, and Canelo had beaten Cotto. Cotto was supposed to be Triple G's mandatory, and the fight everybody wanted to see was young Canelo versus this seasoned Olympian Triple G who's knocking everybody out for the most part, right? Canelo Alvarez said things like, I'm not moving up to middleweight. I'm not ready. I'll move up when I'm ready. If he wants to fight me, we can fight at 155. Blah, blah, blah. Right? So we didn't really even get the Triple G first fight when it was supposed to happen, even though they fought 2 times as of me recording this video. It was supposed to happen probably a year before it happened, maybe even a year and a half, maybe 2 years. I don't know. But it was definitely supposed to happen. Right? So that fight was like backlogged until Canelo felt everything was in place or the pressure was so much he decided to fight him. Canelo also previously made a comment where he says he don't want to fight any Mexican fighters, right? And I can pull all this stuff up. He says he doesn't want to fight any. Look, Canelo uneasy with fighting Mexican rivals. Canelo announces he will no longer fight Mexican fighters. So that is crazy. Canelo's still firm on not facing Mexican fighters, right? So basically, in a nutshell, Canelo Alvarez said, I don't want to fight guys that bear the same flag as me and represent the Mexico flag. But when did this come about? Because you fought Alfonso Gomez, you fought Miguel Vasquez twice, you fought against Alfredo El Perro Angulo. You fought against, who else did he fight that was Mexican in heritage? I know there's more. I'm just spitballing this, but those are a few. El Perro Angulo and different people like that. And it makes you wonder, when did this come about where now all of a sudden this is off limits? Because the people that are representing outside of you, the Mexico flag, that are in or around your weight, are guys like David Benavidez, Mexican American, guys like Zuro Ramirez, right? So it doesn't make sense. So Perro Angulo, who else? Josecito Lopez, Mexican American. I knew I missed some. Alfonso Gomez, Carlos Baldemir. See, that's what I'm saying. So how do you just have a last call for alcohol, and you just turn off the tap and say, oh, I'm not fighting any? other Mexican. Now, back to the title of this video. Now he's openly telling you again and being dismissive of Demetrius Andrade. And the problem with these old media talking points is very simple. If you use old media talking points, he's a runner, he's a boring fighter, then how do you justify Billy Joe Saunders, right? Fighting that type of style, right? And this is what Canelo said in the past. The truth is Andrade hasn't fought anyone, hasn't fought against anyone. He's also boring, very boring. Maybe he's a good fighter. So Canelo right then and there has already contradicted himself. Previously, he said maybe he's a good fighter, but he's a boring fighter. So once you take out the fluff and the filler, he said maybe he's a good fighter. But then at the press conference after Saunders, when Andrade ran up on him, he said he's a horrible fighter. And in that clip, I showed you a Brian Custer interview. He also said, I'll never fight him because he's a horrible fighter. But you already said that maybe he's a good fighter. So at the end of the day, this is why old media is where they are. And it's not popping. They're not doing the viewership. They're not relevant in boxing. And the fighters who choose to take these old media talking points and run with them for safety or aid, it makes you look bad, because this doesn't make sense for Canelo to say, I'm not going to fight a respected guy that people keep asking me about. So obviously there's some level of interest there if people keep asking the question, when you're going to fight Andrade, when you're going to fight Andrade, and he's just dismissing it. So Canelo, like I said, Diva, doesn't want to fight Mexican fighters, right? He says openly, again, he's not going to fight Demetrius Andrade because he's horrible. So explain Average Pilgrim, Eardrum, or whatever his name was, right? You just fought him in February. So Andrade is so much more horrific than Avni Yildirim? Is that what we're really trying to say, right? So as a result, it's hard to defend. I don't even think it's hard. I think it's impossible to defend. And lastly, since I know my boxing, let me tie this all together. I've already stated this. I've already said this, but Terrence Crawford made a comment and he said that Canelo Alvarez does not fight black fighters. Terrence Crawford accuses Canelo of ducking black fighters in shocking blasts as they give him the most problems. So Terrence Crawford made this statement and said, Canelo, I think I'm pound for pound because I ain't ducking nobody, right? And Canelo's a good fighter, but he avoids black fighters. I said the same thing. Crawford said the same thing. We were both treated the same way in the sport of boxing. Like, oh, how could you say anything about Precious Canelo? Now, fast forward to the future. Does what I or Terrence Crawford said sound so crazy when there's a black fighter in or around your weight class, has been in or around your weight class for several years, and you're outright saying, I'll never fight him, he's a horrible fighter? But then he did the same interview with Brian Custer, and then he said, Jake Paul, that question came up. And he's like, oh man. And he's like, never say never. So for Jake Paul, it's never. I have the best points in boxing. Oh my gosh. He said for Jake Paul, I don't know. I'm not going to close that book and, close that chapter. Never say never. Who knows if I'll fight Jake Paul. But then for Andrade, it's like, oh, he too horrible. Stop it. Checkmate.